Hey guys, Josiah here, EasyCaters.com. Just a quick daily recap, review of some of the trades out there today using the relative volume indicator. Um, so let me just start at the top. I've kind of shortened the list down here to some ones that were interesting. QCOM, let's see, these were all moving today. There was a nice 10-minute little pullback on SE today. We had kind of this volume burst toward the end of the day yesterday, and then we broke above that in today's opening range and had this nice little pullback on the 15. It showed up on the 10 and on the 5 there, and then that led to a nice trend. Some of these stocks, you'll notice that some stocks don't highlight. I mostly use my time-based average setting, and after a stock has been moving a lot, the next day the ranges of each of the candles might not be small enough to highlight very often. So some of the big movers out there, the really volatile stocks out there, you might need to use the moving average mode. I'm also going to be releasing, and I haven't put this on the website yet, but I'm releasing a blended mode where it takes the moving average of the volume, the relative volume, and the time-based average, and kind of weights both of those together in whatever weighting that you want. That can weight the time-based to 50% or 60% or whatever you want. And so you can kind of get a combo of best of both worlds kind of thing going on there. But there were a lot of good signals out there today. I've got to actually admit, I actually traded pretty badly today. So I'm kind of going to be in timeout this afternoon, but in my review here, I'm seeing a lot of signals that I missed earlier, unfortunately. But let's see. So this is something that I look for in the first bar on the hourly or 30-minute. I really like to see these big volume bursts come in on a kind of indecision type of candle. And then a lot of times you'll find that these break in one direction or the other. And because of that volume churn, it's kind of like pent up energy is how I think of it. And so a lot of times you can take these in whichever direction they break. And it looks like that got to 6 Rs. ExxonMobil, of course, crude oil was moving today, and so there were a couple of these 1, 2, 3 type setups that worked really well. You can see here on the hourly, we had a strong move, and actually, first of all, we had it on the 15. We had a strong move, 15 inside, kind of 1, 2, 3 setup there that worked well on the 15, and on the 20, you could have taken it as a pullback, or just waited for the hourly, which turned into a 1, 2, 3 as well. And that one, I like to see that churn on the pullback bar there in the 1, 2, 3, indicating that when we're selling off here, it's getting absorbed on, with strength there. And so a lot of shares are trading hands, but not much movement, not much sell-off is actually happening. And so that indicates that there's strength there. So that was happening on ExxonMobil today. So a couple good trades there. IQ, I think I had seen a good trade on here. Yeah, this one had a 15-minute 1, 2, 3. If you can see here, my chart's kind of small here, but there was a nice little inside with that churn that I like to see on the inside candle. Square, I don't really see much. Just kind of some noisy signals there today that didn't really. This one would probably have been the best one, and I probably would not have really been interested in that one. But if you see here on this, so on the 20-minute, it looked like that. So you can see there was some churn there. Down here on the 10-minute, you can see kind of this 3-bar pullback that happened, and the churn was picking up just a little bit as we got down to the bottom of that pullback. So that was a decent signal, but I missed that. It wasn't really obvious in any case. Facebook. Facebook had I wanted to mention this because this was a nice little daily setup. You see here we have this strong move, pullback started, and then yesterday we had this churn bar with a bottoming tail saying this volume, the sell-off is getting absorbed. And then today, just a break above that high was a perfect little swing setup there. And so it trended all day there and closed basically at the high. I'm trying to see there. We hit some resistance, which looks like it was kind of right up in this area of the open of 2 days ago. Ran into that resistance, so we sold off initially in the morning. A little bit of volume signal came in here on the 5 to show you that there was a little bit of support there, not really that great. Then we come back up and retake the high and retest it here, retest the high of this range. And we can see that there's churn coming in there supporting the move, and then we get the good move there. So that was a good trade on the 5-minute. And there was a little bit of a signal over here, not really that interesting. J&J, nice little deep pullback that bottomed out at a relative volume signal here. You can see this on all the time frames. Nice little bottoming tail. Two hourly bars showing churn on the hourly chart. I like to see those where the time frames are kind of stacked, where there's like a 30 inside of an hourly that both are showing churn, or a 10 inside of a 20-minute, or a 5-minute inside of a 15, or a 15 inside of 30, that kind of thing. I like to see a signal on 2 different time frames, and especially if there's one bar that's actually inside of the higher time frame bar, kind of giving a better risk to reward setup and that kind of thing, and also kind of confirming the volume a little bit better too. But anyway, so that one bottomed out at a relative volume signal there, kind of right at the retest of this yesterday's high of this range here. And then we moved back up. MO. The best signal here was this one, and it wasn't really that great, honestly. We had a strong move, pull back a little bit off the highs there, touched the MA, put in churn volume, and honestly, this was not that great. We took out the supply over here, and then we were free to break above, but nothing that I probably would have been looking at too closely. And so here is actually one of the best trades. These are the type of trades I really look for. So we have this nice trend forming, and I like to see these 3-bar pullbacks where the highest volume is at the very base, way off the highs here. The volume steps in right where you would expect the pullback to start bottoming out. And I like to see these on, successfully lower highs, 3 red bars or something like that in a row, with the highest volume on the 3rd bar or the last bar. And you can see that happen perfectly here. And that one was a really nice trade. We had on the 20-minute a kind of 1, 2, 3, but not really that great. This pullback showed up on both the 10 and on the 20 up here, as you can see, and on the 15 a little bit. So that was a missed trade for me. And then Momo had almost exactly the same thing a little earlier in the day. Had this nice little 3-bar pullback on high churn. These are really shallow bars. They're saying, we're putting in a lot of churn volume, a lot of volume for the amount of space that we're actually covering on the chart. And we're pulling back in an uptrend. I mean, it's almost too obvious, honestly. So these are just kind of like, these are what I consider like the nope trades. I kind of call these the nope trades, and in I guess just to myself. But basically, when I see this, it's like, we're pulling back, we're pulling back. Nope, and it just takes off immediately because this is like it's expending effort to try to go down, and it's like this the tape is telling you no, this is not happening, and it usually will break out and move pretty strongly off of that kind of move. And you can see here we had a burst of volume at the top of that range, which is what you would expect, halting the up move. And then we have a burst of volume at the very depth, the bottom of that pullback on the very last bar here. And so that's what I like to see. It's kind of just ping-ponging back and forth here, and then we rocket above that resistance. Microsoft, it looks like it's pretty well set up for tomorrow. It's trying to indicate that we might be trending tomorrow. So we've got strong up move, pullback. We've got this kind of like double bottom situation going on here that we've already triggered above. And as you can see, we had this kind of volume setup that I mentioned a moment ago. This is just 2 bars on the 30-minute chart, and it's a kind of a 1, 2, 3, a small 1, 2, 3 on the hourly chart here. But this is kind of a nice picture for a higher move, and we've already gotten part of that, and we'll see if it works out tomorrow or not. Sometimes we get a lot of noise at the open, and sometimes it just rockets straight to target, so you never know exactly with those. But you can see here, this is kind of what I would like to see, and it shows up on the 20. We've got the volume at the high, and we've got the volume at the deepest part of this pullback here, indicating that somebody stepped up to buy it there. And so that's what I like to see. I'm not seeing much of anything on this one. We had a little volume step in there to lead to this move. You can see it on the 15. On the 5, you can kind of see, I mean, it's just pegged the bottom perfectly with this relative volume signal here, but this is not something that I would necessarily just blindly buy as a reversal. Just because reversals take a little bit more expertise, and that's it's just a little more difficult. I like keeping the training wheels on as much as possible and keeping things easy and simple. So I mostly trade with the trend myself. I think I had seen something. Oh yeah, on ABBV, daily chart is looking really nice here. So this is again, this is not something that I trade, but we are testing the low of this base here, and we've got a volume burst saying, yes, this is being supported at least by some buyer. It may not be a big enough buyer to hold it, but we're at the bottom of a range. It's an ideal risk to reward back up to the top of the range. So that's not a bad setup if you trade ranges. At least from, this is not my expertise, trading ranges, but that looks pretty obvious to me. So that's something to keep an eye on there. ABBV is at the bottom of a range, giving a volume signal, looking like it might want to bounce back up to the high of the range, but it might just roll over if that buyer is not big enough. Let's see here. On USB, I had this kind of 1, 2, 3 pattern on the 30-minute. Nice churn bar, but this was not super clean, I guess. Down here on the 10, you can see that this looked a lot nicer. We had a move up, volume came in at the top, kind of a 3-bar pullback with volume coming in at the bottom of the pullback, and that you can see it even better on the 5, and that led to this move for the rest of the afternoon. Intel, I had my eye on Intel earlier. It did do this 1, 2, 3 setup. Didn't really work that well. See, we had a 3-bar pullback there. Didn't really give us an obvious volume signal. on that on the 15, because this bar was just kind of wide and the volume didn't seem to come in as much as it should. So this one was pretty good here on the 5. We had volume support the bottom of the range here, broke above. We had churn on this pullback indicating there was support there, and then we broke out. It immediately got to, it looks like 2 R's. Yep, and then it completely sold off. So, and then stopped anybody out that was still holding. So this was just kind of sloppy today. That one was a pretty setup that did work, but it just, yeah, I was kind of frustrated with Intel today. Nothing on BSX that I can see. EQT. I like these range type of openings where we just kind of go sideways for a little bit, give a volume signal, and then break out. And that's kind of what happened here. We had a range bar, like an indecision candle, inside indecision candle. We tried to sell off here, and it was absorbed. We came down and then burst up above that and broke out for a nice trend. You can see the volume down here at the bottom of this range. And this is kind of that ping pong look that I talk about. There's volume, 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 and it's just eventually it resolves itself in the direction that it's exposed in, that it's vulnerable to be moved in. So that's what happened here as it broke out above. WLL. Yeah, so this was another example of things that I kind of look for here. Here's a 20-minute kind of indecision candle. It was also a nice indecision candle on the hourly. 30 was okay. It was an opening, high volume churn. And you can sometimes take these if they make sense on just a break above the open like that. But this one had an inside 20. Both, I like to have the churn on the initial bar and preferably with the highest on the second bar or the final trigger bar. And so that one would have worked pretty well, it looks like. Yeah, so let's see what else we've got here. MPC volume came in just at this pullback here. We had kind of a move off the open, pulled back, and it was a 1, 2, 3 on the hourly, and that one worked for 2 hours. It was probably a little bit more attractive on these lower time frames. 15 is decent. It's not that great, honestly. But you can kind of see that volume is just picking up in general down here at the bottom of this range. And so you can kind of infer that, okay, we pulled off, we've gapped up, we've moved off the open, pulling back toward the open here, and we're hitting support. And you can see with the volume that we're just in general hitting support here. And so, a continuation just above that should work. So that's how I would view that. Inside candle here, that was a decent buy. Volume signal stopped to move here at yesterday's closing area. Yeah, the best signal actually was right here. This is a, we rocket above the high, start pulling back, volume steps in at the bottom of the pullback, and it's off to the races there. Really pretty pullback here on AMD. Volume burst at the high, pullback, volume burst at the low. It's that exact look that I like to see, where volume's at the top and at the bottom and not so much in the middle. So that one, if you could have just bought the 10-minute right here, I end up, as you can see on my chart there, I've traded it later in the day right over here, and it just got to 1R for me there. Apple, kind of a 1, 2, 3 on the 10 there. Trying to see if there's any other signals here. You can see it on the 15 there as well. I mean, volume stepped in here, but we were kind of below this MA, so I would not really be taking this as a trend trade at this point, not typically anyway. And so, yeah, that's don't really see much going on there, just these little volume bursts at the low of this range. NVDA, nice little 3-bar pullback here. It's not exactly clean because I like to see this high, the highest the high of the pivot have a burst of volume, and then the low of the pivot have a nice burst of volume. This one was a little more sloppy, so we had the burst of volume up here on the 5, pulled back, broke out, pulled back, and then we started getting this supporting volume coming in after this initial break. And so it was kind of a little bit of a sloppy setup, but that one could have worked really well there. NVDA. I know I was watching this at one point. I don't know if I actually ended up trading it or not. I can't remember. But yeah, I like these 3-bar pullbacks on volume churn. Those are one of my favorite setups. AMRN. You can see some nice volume signals on the 30 here, but these are not the type that I trade, but you know, it's kind of a pretty obvious bottom right there on the 20 and the 30. And on the 15 there, we got a group of candles here on the 10 that looked like. So essentially, to me, when I read this, I see a downtrend developing, downtrend. This is pulling back up, and shorts are trying to get it to go back below again, and they're not succeeding, and then they all get stopped out here. And so it ends up in a short squeeze there as the trend breaks, and then we got to pull back and start reversing here. So we had some little 10-minute inside candles here that worked for 1 or 2 hours each, it looked like. MRK, not something I would have been trading necessarily just because of how the day opened up. You could see some volume stepped in here to kind of reverse the trend. So we were in that same kind of downtrend situation, trying to go down here, but not really able, and then we reverse. Nice little pullbacks here. I would like to see the volume come in at this last candle before it breaks. And that didn't happen exactly there. Did happen here, and that was actually a really clean signal that worked for 2 hours, almost 2.5, 3. NTNX, nice high volume candle in the open. Like I said, a lot of times you can just take these on a break of the body here, or the body of the candle, stop under the low of the entry candle, something like that. There's several different ways to trade that, but I do like those indecision candles on the open with high churn. Those can really lead to a nice trend when they break. And this one, you can see the volume on multiple time frames here: 30, 20, 15, 10, and the 5. And then, so in this 5 here, we had a 5 with a volume burst, then a 5 inside that candle's range. And so that was a nice risk to reward as we broke up above it. That's not exactly the picture that I trade, but those worked. And then there's a nice 20 right there, kind of a pullback right there that led to another move. CAG. Yeah, it's kind of a sloppy looking chart today. You can see some volume signals here on these pullbacks that worked. This one arrested the fall here, but it was just kind of developed into a little bit of a range before topping out here. And it looks like it was, it was just kind of a situation where we broke above this high here of this range, and then tested that as support, and there was support there, lo and behold, and it looks like it went for 4 times your risk there. You can see nice volume signals on the 5 here supporting those pullbacks. SLB, nice little churn bar just before the break where it started trending. Not much there that I would trade. Yeah, I like this clean signal here where we've got, you know, we break above and pull back. We put in volume near the low here off of that high. And so that would have been a decent signal. I think it looks like it stopped out later before actually working. But nevertheless, that was a pretty good signal. It may have held. I can't really tell right there. And then finally, we got COP. Had a nice 1, 2, 3 kind of setup there. Or you could have taken that for 2 Rs, 2 times your risk. 20-minute was a range candle there. Broke above it, pulled back. Volume kind of came in to support it. And then it continued on higher for 2 Rs there. Trying to see on the lower time frame. You can see, you know, we had churn here as we broke through this resistance level. We broke above it, came back and tested it as support on that same level, and churned volume came in to support it. Supported it again, though we did dip below this low here. It's still supporting it at this level here. And then eventually we get a break above here. This is not super clean, but you can kind of infer what's going on here as you, in retrospect, as you read this at least. And then this is a nice little 3-bar pullback, kind of like what I talk about. This is a smaller time frame, but it did work for, it looks like, at least 2 Rs, maybe 4 Rs there. And so those are the kind of trades that I really like to look for. So that's what I got today. Just wanted to kind of review the trades for the day. And you can see on here on COP too, we got the low of this range being supported by good relative volume signals here. Relative volume coming in just before this gap up day today. So yeah, I mean, I see those all the time. And I think, what was it, Facebook that had, yeah, the relative volume signal just yesterday leading to today's break. So I love to see those. Those are good signals sometimes if they're in the right location where they're, again, pulling off that high in a pullback that kind of makes sense in a trend trading perspective. Really love to trade those types of setups, at least on the intraday. But anyway, that's what I got today, guys. Hope that helps. I've gotten a lot of emails from you guys, so I appreciate you guys getting in touch. And